okay?
Yep.
Excellent. So I'll get started. Welcome everyone to, as Ryan said, the LeedsAzure user group. Just a bit of to give everyone a warning. This is the first time I'm ever presenting any type of user group. So I'm a bit of a newbie to the presenting game, as it were. So please be patient. As it says, I'm a newbie trying to act like a pro. So bear with me if you can today. A little bit about me. That's me. My name is Shabaz Darr. I'm a senior professional services consultant at Concord Technology Group, based in Offset in Wakefield. My main focus in my job is on cloud, mainly Azure and security. You can get me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is at Shabaz Darr. I like to try and be quite active and in the tech community. I've also got a blog, which the link is there, iamITgeek.com. And again, I'm quite passionate about blogging about projects that I've done, my experiences with different technologies. So please do check me out. With regards to my background, I've been in IT for almost 15 years now. Started off doing support, first line support, second line support, third line support. Joined Concord, it'll be 6 years next month, as a consultant, a managed service consultant, and I've moved my way up to a senior consultant. With regards to Azure and Microsoft Cloud in general, I'd say the last 3 years or so, it's been my main focus, and I've been really concentrating on it. Still got a long way to go with it. Obviously, it's such a big platform, but yeah, I really enjoy that topic. Quite passionate about it. So today's presentation that I'm going to be giving is based on my top 10 Azure security best practices. Before I do get things rolling on the actual top 10, as it were, just a few kind of misconceptions and things that I found with people or customers understanding Azure and security in the past. I've had it, it's Microsoft responsibility. That's one of the things you hear I hear quite a bit from customers. That is technically wrong. That obviously Microsoft have a responsibility kind of diagram that they have on their website, and it is actually as customers or end users, making sure your infrastructure and applications are all secure is your end user's responsibility. Microsoft are responsible for the physical security of the data centers around the world, making sure the hardware is safe. However, when it comes to the actual virtual machines, infrastructure, network, applications, they are the end client / end user's responsibility to secure. There are many services available to assist with that, and some of those I'll be looking at closer, and I'll be showing you in the presentation moving forward. The cloud is already secure enough. Azure is secure by default. Out of the box, there are services like your NSGs, your network security groups, these network security gateways that don't allow inbound traffic, for example. But there's so much more that we can do to increase that security footprint. Once you provision your network, your VMs, applications, and data, you get a whole host of different services, as I mentioned before, that you can configure to add to that extra security layer. Microsoft monitor it. They do. However, if you want to monitor your infrastructure and get notifications directly to yourself, then you need to put in further configuration in the monitoring and alerting. In my opinion, where Microsoft kind of let themselves down is with their communication. they do have a monitoring platform, and they have different areas where you can look for updates yourself. But a lot of the time they might not be relevant to you. They might be in a different zone, different country. What we're as the end users concerned with is our own infrastructure, and that's a side where you have to configure alerting, notifications and monitoring specific to your needs. Excuse me, just coughing. Security services cost too much. Now, there is always going to be a cost associated with security services. And to the naked eye, paying for the additional services and licensing can look expensive. But my argument with the customer is always think about how much would it cost if you had a breach. And that's not just the cost of, the cost of having the downtime or something like that. It's if you look at the sort of how your image of the business looks as well. So I think there was a story around, might have been British Airways that got breached, and then after they got breached, their stock plummeted, all their stock, and that's cost them God knows how much money. So if you spend that bit more extra on your security, it costs a bit up front, but in the long run, it's going to save a lot of money. So I believe, in comparison, the cost of security is not as expensive compared to, potentially getting breached. So that my last quick misconception is something I only learned last week, if I'm honest with you. I always didn't realize this was the case, and it came quite as a massive shock to me. Turns out that people's biggest fear about cloud computing isn't data security, it's what happens when there's thunderstorms. And it turns out thunderstorms do not affect the cloud. So I obviously thought differently, so I've been corrected there. So who knew? So now I've cleared those misconceptions up, we'll move on to the top 10. So coming in at number 10, implement DDoS protection and mitigation. Excuse me. So for those that aren't aware, what is a DDoS attack? DDoS stands for distributed denial of service, and a DDoS attack it's like a malicious attempt to disrupt normal traffic of a targeted server, service, or a network by overwhelming that target and the surrounding infrastructure, so you flood it with traffic. A DDoS attack attempts to exhaust that application's resources, making it unavailable to legitimate users. And what you find is DDoS attacks tend to target an endpoint that's publicly reachable through the internet. So, an example, web servers are always quite susceptible to these sort of targets when it comes to DDoS attacks. So with DDoS protection and mitigation in Azure, there are two tiers. You've got your basic tier and your standard tier. Excuse me. The basic tier is free. It's automatically enabled as part of the Azure platform. It includes always on traffic monitoring, real-time mitigation of common network level attacks, and the entire scale of Azure's global network can be used to distribute and mitigate these sort of attacks across regions. The standard tier does cost. There's a cost associated with that, and it provides additional mitigation capabilities other than the ones you find, as well as the ones you find in basic. You've got additional mitigation capabilities, which I'll speak about in a second. So some of the standard tier features include native platform integration, always on traffic monitoring, turnkey protection, attack alerting, multi-layered protection, and adaptive tuning. So those are some of the features. With regards to the mitigation aspect, with your DDoS protection standard, it monitors actual traffic utilization and constantly compares it against thresholds defined in the policy that you configure. When the traffic thresholds exceeded, the DDoS don't know what that is. The DDoS mitigation is initiated automatically, and when the traffic returns below that threshold again, the mitigation is removed and it goes back to the standard. Coming in at number 9, using a web application firewall, or a WAF as it's known. What is a WAF? What is a web application firewall? Essentially, it works alongside your Azure application gateway, and it provides a centralized protection of your web applications from common exploits and vulnerabilities. Web applications are increasingly targeted by malicious attacks, and some common vulnerabilities. SQL injection, cross-site scripting are two quite common attacks when it comes to your web applications. Some benefits of having a web application firewall. It's additional protection for your applications in Azure, and you also get additional monitoring capabilities for those applications. What you'll find is there's a common theme in a lot of these, and monitoring is one of them. A lot of these services have a lot of extra monitoring, and when I mentioned in one of my first slides that, you know, Azure, Microsoft do monitor Azure, but it's down to us to configure that additional monitoring and alerting more specific to our needs. There are two types of web application firewall modes. Detection mode and prevention mode. I do apologize, I should have actually put that in my slide, but detection mode, it monitors and logs all threat alerts, so it doesn't actually have any prevention, or it doesn't actually action anything. It's more of a logging mode. So you turn on logging diagnostics for your application gateway. It doesn't block any incoming requests when it's operating in detection mode, as I mentioned. With prevention mode, this does block intrusions and attacks that the rules detect. And what happens if the attacker, they receive a 403 unauthorized access exception, and when they're obviously trying to have their attack, and the connection's then closed. So that the prevention mode records these attacks in the logs as well. Some of the features of a web application firewall, I think I mentioned a couple of them a few minutes ago. There's SQL injection protection, cross-site scripting protection. You've got HTTP response splitting and remote file inclusion, and protection against HTTP protocol violations. There's many more, I believe, so those are just some of them to mention. Coming at number 8. Now, this isn't a service. This isn't something you can, this isn't something you can configure, so to speak, and you can, I suppose. But having a firewall strategy. So this is like obviously a strategy, and having a plan of what type of firewall do you want to have in Microsoft Azure. So as the old lady says, deploy firewall. Like I said, it's good to have a strategy. You've got two options when it comes to your firewall in Azure. You can either go with the Azure native firewall, which is it's a stateful firewall as a service, and it supports filtering for both inbound and outbound traffic. You can have internal spoke-to-spoke as well as hybrid connections through the Azure VPN and ExpressRoute gateways. It is highly available, and it scales quite easily as well, depending on your usage. If you've got a peak load or your business grows. You've got network and application level connectivity policies you can configure. and right. You've got near real-time security as well, so threat intelligence-based filtering can be enabled on the firewall. And you can also use SNAT and DNAT, which are probably more common if you've ever done firewalls or on-premises firewalls, source NAT and destination NAT. So the Azure firewall utilizes a static public IP address for your virtual network resources. And you can have source network address translation, which is the SNAT. And you can also have the destination network translation, which is the DNAT. Again, it's got fully logging capability, so centralized logging, fully integrated, built-in monitoring and reporting, that you can have with the Azure Monitor. Your second choice, really, with a firewall strategy, is to have a third-party virtual appliance. So these are also known as NVA, so network virtual appliances. These can be purchased via your Azure Marketplace. They're much more expensive than your Azure native firewall, but they've got a different sort of benefit to them, as well as all these, the security configurations and things that I mentioned in the Azure firewall, which they can do. There can be a benefit if you already have an on-premises firewall solution with the same vendor, and you want to use those existing skill sets within your team. So it's ease of management. You've probably, if you work for a business and you spent so much money on a on-premises security solution, and you want to go for like a hybrid implementation with Azure, you've invested in that firewall. Your staff have invested time in learning it. Your business has probably invested time and money in training them in it. So sometimes it's a benefit to have that in the cloud as well, in Azure, so you can use those skills. Some of the network virtual appliance vendors that I personally have experience with include Palo Alto, WatchGuard, and Sophos. So there are many more, but these are just the ones that I've had experience with. Coming at number 7, again, this is the actual title of the slide isn't really a service. So I think it's more of a, like I said, a best practice, but it is to do with using a service. So defining clear lines of responsibility within your wider IT team. Excuse me, I keep on having to have some water because my throat's dry. So define clear lines of responsibility. So as Oprah says, everyone gets a responsibility, basically. I feel it's important. It's an important security practice to define these responsibilities. What you can use for that is role-based access control. To give members of your IT team access to only areas which relate to their job function. So ensuring these responsibilities are clearly defined ensures consistency, which helps avoid confusion that can lead to human or automation errors that create security risk. For those of you who don't know, I'll just quickly explain. Role-based access control is, or RBAC, it's probably more commonly known, is a method of restricting network access based on a role in an enterprise. So it lets you have access rights only to the information and jobs you need to do. An example would be allow one user to manage a virtual machine in a subscription and add another user to manage the virtual network. So there you've got your virtual machine and virtual network responsibilities separated. The way you control access to resources using Azure RBAC is to create role assignments. And this consists of basically 3 elements: a security principle, a role definition, and a scope. So a security principle is an object that represents a user, a group, or like a managed identity that is requesting access to that Azure resource. Role definition is a collection of those permissions. A typical example is an owner, or a contributor, or a reader. These are those 3: an owner, a contributor, and reader. They're 3 separate role definitions that you can assign. And the scope is a set of resources that the access applies to. So, as I mentioned, the virtual machine, a network. So when you assign a role, you can further limit the actions followed, actions allowed by defining a scope. Coming in at number 6, the theme of most of my slides, monitoring Azure resources is very important in my opinion. It's important to constantly monitor your infrastructure and set up alerting to ensure you're made aware of any potential threats as they occur, rather than when it's too late. What I kind of refer to, the example I give here a lot of the time with customers is, do you want to be reactive or do you want to be proactive? If you want to be reactive, then don't configure any alerting or monitoring. But if you want to be proactive, and rather than a user calling you and letting you know there's a security threat and complaining about not having access to something, do you want to be proactive and get alerts before users see the threat and before they're alerted to it? And you know, the answer is normally people want to be proactive. I suppose I like to believe that, but so that's why monitoring Azure resources more so than they're already configured is important to me for a security best practice. So that's the top 5. If anyone is asleep, can we wake them up? I hope I'm not being too boring. I'll change it up a bit and just do a, as MC Hammer says, stop demo time. Just do a couple of demos on some of the bits I've spoken about. I use demo loosely. I'm just going to just show you in the Azure portal how you know where to configure these certain items like DDoS and stuff like that. So I'll just quickly unshare my screen and I'll reshare with my Azure. So if everyone can see that, this is just it's a demo tenant that I use through my work to do customer demos.
Yeah, we can see that.
Excellent. So the first thing I will just show you is DDoS protection. So to create a DDoS protection plan, you want to go to create a resource. And then just simply search for DDoS. And there you can see DDoS protection plan. Get a little bit of information and overview there. Click on create. Now here you've got some basic items you need to put in. Just a name. I'm just going to call it your subscription. Now again, this is already assuming you've got certain elements in place, like your resource group and your underlying network. So apologies if that's if you're not sure about that. This is just assuming you've got all this in place. So once you've filled out those details, you're allowed to create. And then you click on go to resource. Let's actually go there and just have a look at some of the settings. So these are just some basic settings of there. If I go into my my network, on here you'll see there's a DDoS protection setting. If you click on this, you can choose between obviously the basic is the default one. So if you move to standard, You see my test DDoS plan that I created earlier. That's there, or you can create a new one if not. And then you can save that. So you can do the further configuration, the metrics around it, by selecting the protected public IP address, the public IP address that you want to protect. So here you can add your metrics around, you know, which public IP. Like I mentioned, this is to protect against any resources that have a public IP address. So that's just a little short demo on DDoS. Quickly show you something on role-based access control as well. So this is because you're wanting to separate resources within Azure. I know it's not really linked to this presentation, but role-based access control is overall throughout the Microsoft stack, including Microsoft 365 as well. But obviously for the relevant for today is to show you in Azure how it's put together. So if you go to your subscription, you have the access control, or IAM as it's known in short. And here, so you can do a number of things here. You can add a role assignment. You can check existing access. So if you're not sure what access a specific account's got, you can check in here. So if I just type in there's me, and it checks against it. It tells you what roles I've got. So I'm a service administrator. So I've got full access to resources in this subscription. So that's always a good way of initially checking to see what access somebody has before you look to assign it. You can deny assignments as well. So if you want to make sure someone doesn't have access, you can deny them. To add a role assignment or to add access, you can go up to add. You can either do a custom role, a co-administrator, or a role assignment. So if we select a role, these are the roles that I mentioned: contributor, reader, owner. I'll be here all night if I mentioned all these, but I'll just do a simple one for now. So contributor. And then if I just select the user, one of my demo users. If we just quickly look at custom role, this is a bit more intuitive, and you can give better permissions than this. So I'll just go test. So you can start from you can use JSON for this, or you can start from scratch, or you can clone a role. This is where you can add specific permissions. So, for example, there it could be specific to Azure Active Directory. For the virtual machines, hybrid network. There we go. Virtual machine image building. There's lots of, as you can see, there's lots of different permissions you can add. You've got a whole variety, and you can just go a lot more custom and specific. And again, I think it's best practice to try and do this within your tenant and your subscription. Oh, sorry. Last thing I'll show on the demo side is the web application, not the Azure firewall. So if you go to, again, the create a resource, and you've got virtual network options here. What we're looking for is firewall. There we go. And here's essentially where we can create our firewall. Again, very similar to how you create other resources. You know, resource group, give it a name. Now you can create a new virtual network, or if you've got an existing one, you can use that. I'll use an existing one, and I created a public IP address earlier. One thing to note, to be able to create this firewall, Azure firewall, you need to have a subnet within your network, which I'll show you what that is. So you need to have this in place before it lets you create that firewall. Oh, I've got the wrong network, probably. There we go. So before it allows you to create an Azure firewall, you need to have a subnet within your overarching VNet, overarching virtual network, called Azure Firewall Subnet, and it's got to be that specific name. Sorry, I'll just quickly get back on course. Q. So again, you can create a new public IP address, or I created one earlier, Blue Peter style. You can implement any tags you want, and then just as a quick review of what we can create. And I'll show you some, once it's created, I'll just quickly go into it and show you some of the options we've got around it. So once this is finished, I'll show you some quick services and configurations around it, and I'll move on with the second half of the presentation, top 5. I hope this is one of the times where it's quick and we're not here for hours waiting for this. Oh, I should have created one earlier, shouldn't I? Should have gone full Blue Peter. I bet this is a proper rookie mistake of doing a live demo, isn't it? Waiting around for stuff like this. I'll try and come back to this later. It's obviously taking a bit longer than what I wanted. A lot longer than when I practiced it earlier today. So I'll crack on with the presentation. Has anyone got any questions they want to ask on the last 5 ones that we've done? I mean, there's going to be some question time at the end as well, but if it's someone got something fresh in their mind. anything I'd recommend. So I'm just looking at the questions in the chat. Anything I'd recommend and why? There are, if I get further into the list, there are a few definite recommendations I'd make. With a lot of the ones that I've mentioned, all the ones I've really kind of mentioned, I suppose, with regards to you know, the monitoring and alerting, especially, that I think is quite important. Stuff like your DDoS protection mitigation. That's if you've not got if you've not really got any public facing applications as such, it's not really important. No real point in having it. So I suppose a DDoS protection mitigation is in a specific use case. What I'll do is at the end, if it's all right, Andrew, I'll answer that question, because some of the other ones I'm going to discuss are probably an overall best practice that that you should have. So thank you for your question. I will definitely come back to it. So I'll just get back to where I was. Bear with me. So everyone can see that.
Yeah, we can see that.
Part 2, top 5. So coming in at number 5, MFA. So this is definitely something I recommend that as a standard should be, in my experience, should be implemented within your entire Microsoft cloud stack, really, but especially with your Azure services. You've got two forms of it, really. You've got the user side and the admin side, both of which I'm going to go into. Second. So to be fair, this GIF doesn't really have anything to do with MFA. I just really wanted Samuel L. Jackson in my presentation. So that's the only reason I use that. So with MFA, you've got a few different options around it. When it comes to licensing, you've got basic and you've got premium. Now, what you need to set up MFA for both your users and admins, as I mentioned. So for users, you can use the basic Azure AD licensing, which is free. However, for your administrators, I'd look to invest in that premium P1 at least, because you can utilize conditional access in conjunction with your MFA. And with like the conditional access policies, you can add another layer of security then on top of your MFA. So that's definitely a recommendation I'd make across the board for your users and your admins. There are several different forms of authentication, including an automated phone call, a text message, or what in my opinion is probably the most secure out of those is the mobile authentication app. The problem I've got with text messages is it's not encrypted. And I can't spring to my mind, but I'm sure there's been stuff in the press as well where people using MFA text, that there have been breaches with that. So it's not secure, or as secure as the mobile app. So my recommendation would be to use the mobile app where you can. So FIDO2, which is FIDO stands for Fast Identity Online. It's an open standard for passwordless authentication. So your FIDO allows users and organizations to leverage like a standard sign-in to your resources without a username or password, using an external fob or security key. So it's like a platform key built into a device. So you've got providers who do these FIDO keys. You've got Ubico, HID or HID, and Surety, I believe, are 3 or 4 that do it. I've done a blog and a video as part of the Azure Advent calendar back in December, all based on MFA. So there's a YouTube video and a blog post. So please do check it out. You can get it from my link in my IMIT Geek blog. So that's got a lot more further information around MFA. So please do check that out. Coming at number 4, that again, this is another, it's not really a service, so to speak. This is just something that in my experience, I've found to be a lifesaver in the work that I do. Using change control. So this is something that's as I said, been a lifesaver for me in the past. Now cloud platforms like Azure have made it much quicker to make changes. Make them much faster, but if they're not documented, vetted, and controlled, it can cause major security risks, in my opinion. So, what I suggest is documenting your technical steps when you make a change, before you make that change. As what you'll find is, because it's documented and it's saved somewhere centrally, it makes it easier for others to understand exactly what steps you've taken in the event there's a rollback required and you're not there. Get your document reviewed, that not just technically, but other stakeholders within the business, so like your managers, and get them to review that document. And again, it just makes people more aware, and it just if they review it and they approve it, it just emphasizes that your document is actually of a good quality and it makes sense and the technical steps are correct. So yeah, like I said, getting your change control reviewed and authorized, it makes everyone aware of the changes you're making. Controlling the changes, and with change control, in my opinion, adds more control to the whole process. And by that, I mean, you know, if you say, for example, you've got a morning shift and an afternoon shift of support, you know, if people are making changes in the morning, they go home, they're not documented. You come in on shift on the evening or afternoon, all hell's breaking loose. There's loads of issues. There's loads of security issues going on. You don't know that person in the morning shift has made those changes unless they're documented, unless they've been reviewed, unless other people are aware of it. And it helps us getting control. It helps mitigate a lot of risk. So, for example, any sort of VM security rules or firewall rules that you need to make, if a change implementer has documented them and they've been approved by a change board, for example, beforehand, it makes it easier for other people to investigate any issues the change might cause. And like I mentioned earlier, the rollback is much more simple and quicker. Yeah, just emphasizing the point. It makes it easier to troubleshoot potential issues after the fact, and it also lowers your security risk as well, because you've documented it. People know why you've made the change and what changes happened. So use change control. I think is very important security best practice. I'll get into the top 3 now. So strict password policy. As my mate Yoda says, your password weak it is. More complex, but change less often. So by this, what I mean is having a strict password policy is very important to ensure you're keeping your Azure infrastructure secure. I recommend to customers that having more complex passwords that change less often is more secure than less complex that change more often. What I've found in my experience is that when users have to change the password more often, it causes them to lock their accounts out because they're constantly they're changing it, they've forgotten what it is. So they'll, especially when they first change it, those first few days, week or so, they keep unlocking the passwords out, and it can be annoying to them and you as an admin having to keep unlocking it. and also what I found is it makes less secure passwords, because what users will do is they'll just add a number or a symbol to their last password. So it causes it to be less secure. Something you can do to mitigate that, I suppose, is to prohibit the use of simple passwords. So everyone's favorite password 123, making sure that can't be used. So this isn't really part of a password policy you configure, but more of a what I'd call a company policy. And it's regards to securing your users. So I recommend for Windows 10 using Windows Hello for your Windows 10 devices. So users can either use a PIN or even for more security, use their face recognition. So that's something I found to be a good something good to implement for users who have Windows 10. And again, another more of a kind of company policy, so to speak, with passwords. Using a complex password in conjunction with MFA gives your users that secure identity management, and it goes a long way to securing your Azure infrastructure. So those two combined, in my opinion, is a good security best practice. That's a lot. Second. Coming at number 2, Azure policy. For those that don't know about it, just a quick overview. So Azure policy helps to enforce organizational standards and to assess compliance at scale. So it sounds off the back of it, it sounds similar to RBAC, but there are a few key differences between Azure policy and your RBAC. So your Azure policy ensures that resource state is compliant to your business rules without concern for who made the change or who has the permission to make that change. RBAC focuses on managing user actions and different scopes. If control of an action is required, then RBAC is the correct tool to use. A combination of RBAC and Azure policy can provide a full scope of control within Azure. And Azure policy, there's different Azure services you can use or tools you can use to configure it. The Azure portal itself, you like a bit of GUI. If you're more of a coder and a command liner, then PowerShell and CLI, or as some of the discussions early on when Ryan was just talking about ARM templates, you can use those as well. I'll do a drum roll here if I had one, but in at number 1 is the Azure Security Center. So again, it's similar to the Microsoft 365 Security Score. Don't know if people are familiar with that, but this is very similar, but it's for your Azure infrastructure. So this is number 1 on my list. And what this does is the Azure Security Center helps you ensure you're following best practice, and it helps you fix common misconfigurations with your Azure infrastructure as a service or your platform as a service. And essentially, this is helping you continuously improve your security posture, and making sure that the configurations you are putting in place do meet that Microsoft Azure best practice standard. So it's a great tool from that perspective. Yep, so as I mentioned, it helps you follow best practice and fix common issues. And with the standard tier offering, so like I said, there's a basic and a standard tier. With the standard tier offering, you can get enhanced threat protection, which again just increases your security footprint within Azure. So that is my top 10 list. I'm going to do another short demo. Yes, first time presenting. I am crazy to do a second demo, especially if it goes like the first one. Hopefully it won't. So I'll just quickly unshare my screen. So I'm probably just going to concentrate around and just show you around the MFA parts, the MFA for users and admins. There's a few questions which I will touch on after this, if that's okay. So lo and behold, that deployment's finished as well. Quickly touch on that. So the firewall deployment, I've gone into my network. It is the firewall option there. Oh, I clicked on the wrong network. Yeah, I did. So we'll click on this. We can manage it and add rules, etc. in here. To fully manage it, you see a link here. You can use the Azure Firewall Manager. So I'll just quickly click on that and show you a quick overview. So you can create your Azure Firewall policies. You can define rules, traffic filtering across your multiple Azure Firewall instances. You can add a security virtual hub, or you can add a security to a virtual network. These are where you can add your virtual hubs and your virtual networks, firewall policies. I've obviously not got anything configured at the moment, but that's just there. So I'll just quickly show you around the MFA stuff. So the multi-factor authentication is managed through Azure AD. So if you go into your Azure AD and then you go into security, click on MFA. So sorry, there's two different locations you can do this. Yeah. There you go. That's what I was expecting to see. So as your general for your overall general multi-factor authentication settings, you've got like your account lockout. So you can define thresholds here. So the number of MFA denials to trigger an account lockout, the amount of minutes you want lockout counter to reset, and the minutes until the account is automatically unblocked. You can unblock users from using MFA requests. Configure your fraud alerting. Get notifications and alerting here as well. Spoke about the hardware tokens. This is for your auth tokens, and you can upload them or download them. And you've got phone MFA caller ID number for the US, but you can set that here as well. To give your users to configure like your user side MFA configuration, if you go back into Azure AD and then go to users, there's a multi-factor authentication button there. And if you click on that, it'll take you to so you can enable or disable for users. Click on service settings, so you can add more specific configurations here. Allow users to create app passwords to sign into non-browser apps. So this is if you want MFA for like your different applications like Outlook, OneDrive, or if you disable that, then it's just MFA for when they log onto the web. My own recommendation is to have it on to allow users to create app passwords and have that extra protection for your applications as well. You can, if you obviously most of us did before recently work in offices, and what I recommend personally to customers is that when you're in your office, you're surrounded by trusted people. You've got security built into the building. You've got your firewall as well. So I recommend to users or customers that they add their public IP addresses of their offices to skip multi-factor authentication when they're in the office. So that's always something I feel is quite recommended. I spoke about the different methods. You can disable or enable them within this area. And again, this is all user specific. Believe it or not, in this day and age, people don't have smartphones, so you may have to have leave the call to phone on for people who don't have smartphones. Again, not all users want something work related on their personal phone. So if you don't have a corporate mobile, you may have to leave the call to phone on and put their desk phone number in there. So text to phone message we mentioned, notification through the mobile app, and then we mentioned the hardware tokens earlier, so there's that option as well. And this is one that I find is quite useful. Again, my own opinion on this is that it's normally 7 days, so it's basically remember your multi-factor authentication. So at the moment, as you can see, the default is 1 day, but then you're gonna make MFA be a hindrance to users if you leave it at that, in my opinion. So having it at a threshold of maybe 7 days, so every week it remembers it for a week, I think is quite fair. And I've had it where it's been set to 1, and it puts people off it. It puts the users off having MFA. And what we want to try and show customers is that MFA is essential and it has its good points. As I mentioned here, you have different options. You can enable it, and you can enforce it as well. Global admins here, you can enable it for them, or you can enforce it for your different administrators. There, we spoke about enabling it for them. Billing admins, etc., signing allowed users. So you've got all your options here to enable it. As I mentioned, you're fine enough to use the free version for your users, but for your admins, I'd definitely recommend doing the Azure AD Premium 1 option to give the extra layer of security, which is the conditional access. Quickly take you back to conditional access. So you get some basic conditional access policies, and there's some baseline ones, again, requiring MFA for admins. You can enable that, and what that'll basically do is it won't allow admins to log in until they've enabled MFA, or you've enabled MFA for them, and they configure it. So you've got different. You can create new policies. I won't go through the whole thing, but you've got different assignments. You can select what the policy applies to. Is it cloud apps or user actions? You've got certain conditions you can set around them for different device platforms. The different, Windows 10, Android, iOS, etc. What devices to stay in? Does it need to be included or excluded? So these are all some useful things around MFA. I'll just quickly. So yeah, that's the demo for my MFA. Bear with me 1 second. So that's the second demo done. So thank you very much for watching. Thank you to Ryan for giving me this opportunity to present. It's a massive ambition of mine to do something, to start doing some stuff like this. I hope I've not bored you all to death. And just thank you for listening. And there are some questions, I believe, in the chat, so I'll quickly just review those. Is it still recommended to use separate admin and run accounts? I'm not sure what that means fully.
So that would be, I would expect, between having a user account that is your standard login and then having like an underscore ADM account
100%.
to elevate upwards to do other things.
Yes, in my opinion, it's definitely recommended to have a separate ADM account or a separate account that has increased privileges for your cloud. So the way, we're very, all of us do a lot of social media and we're quite active in that sense. So because, like, for example, I use you, Ryan, you're quite active on social media and doing these sort of events. You're kind of in the public eye in the IT community. So you can be quite an easy target, if that makes sense.
I could be, but I know my security posture. And I also know that for things like my own Office 365 tenant, where I have Exchange Online, I have an account that is the Exchange Online admin. I have a global admin for the tenant. I have SharePoint Online admin for that tenant. Because I go to the nth degree of split delegation when it comes to requirements of permissions. But what you can do, and you didn't mention it, with perhaps might have wanted to, is with P2 licenses you can use a thing called privileged identity management.
All right, yeah.
Just-in-time access. So you can actually elevate people's access from being a reader up to an owner for a very short space of time.
Yeah.
But there's a P2 license that the people would need for that, which is obviously a greater cost than the P1 Azure Active Directory licenses. But there is that opportunity to do it that way, as opposed to having separate accounts. But it does require that you've got a process in place to say yay or nay to elevating Joe Bloggs' permissions from just a viewer to owner of everything.
No, definitely. Thanks, Ryan. One of the other questions, I believe, from Tim: are there any template or code options to manage the firewall configuration? I honestly don't. Coding and the templates aren't my strongest point, unfortunately. So I can't give you. Ryan, are you aware of any sort of?
So the first thing I would say is that there is a huge swathe of Azure Quick Start templates. If you search for this on GitHub, you can go Azure Quick Start templates, and you can find all of the Azure Resource Manager templates. That some of them are provided by the Azure Resource Manager team. Some of them are provided by members of the community, like myself, and others. And they're a good starting point for getting your hands dirty with ARM templates, I would say. There was another question, which I have waited until the end to comment on it. It was Tim's question around the subscription architecture.
Sorry, that's at the beginning.
So the reason why I'm leaving this to the end, leaving this one, is because it's a really, really good question. And if you have, it helps if I click on the right, I've got two laptops and the keyboard attached to one laptop, and I'm on the other laptop, and I just hit the enter button on the keyboard that's attached to my work laptop, not my personal one, thinking it was going to send that message. But that link that I've just put through there is Microsoft's way of how they manage Azure, and they use subscription architectures that make use of management groups, which is a logical entity above a subscription and can contain other management groups. So you can say have your IT Europe team and IT US team all under the IT team as managed different tiers of management groups, and the US team would look after US type resources and the Europe team would look after Europe type resources, that sort of thing. And it allows you to do a lot of good things within the Azure platform. And as you mentioned about Azure policy and RBAC, you can do that at management group level. So that article is a really good read. I seriously recommend everybody go and have a read of that and come and ask me hard questions about this once you've had a good read of it.
Excellent, thank you. And thanks to everyone for the time this evening. I do really appreciate everyone taking time out. You can say you were there when Shabaz Darr did his first presentation. So yeah, thanks again, Ryan. Honestly, I do really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to present today, and hopefully the first of many more to come from me.
No, as I said, I got into the tech community via another user group leader who used to be a Microsoft MVP in the SharePoint space in Manchester, a guy called Mark Stokes. Still does a lot in the SharePoint community. He just had a couple of years where his family came first, the community came second.
Yeah.
Still an amazing guy. But he gave me my opportunity to present, and I did a session kind of like this, but not like this at all. I did it in person in Manchester, and it's a very different experience presenting over Teams meeting like this to doing one in person with people that are looking at you and sometimes
funny faces.
Some of them maybe, yeah. One of my colleagues was there. He was good at that.
Well, I've actually got several of my colleagues in the thing today, so they've been here to support me as well. So that's really important to me. So thank you to them.
Well done, Shabaz.
Thank you.
And anybody, if you want to come off mute, please feel free to. This is supposed to be, a nice inclusive community. We want people to have conversations. I noticed, Tim, you've kind of followed on with a question about you pondering about a sub per application. I would say the way that I would normally architect things is you have production subscription, and then you use dev test subscriptions, which actually can be a actual dev test subscription, not a production subscription. And the reason why you don't use dev test for dev and testing subscription types and application types is because you get basically you get a cut off of the total price because you're not paying for the SLA because it's not production. So it's always useful to use dev test where you can, but there's a lot you can do in Azure to manage the life cycle of applications. I'm sure probably have some more questions on that one.
Yeah, that's kind of where my head's at as well. Is trying to find a solution that fits all of our applications. But I think we're probably going to end up in a little bit of a hybrid. So the big applications may well be multi-subscription for different tiers, different pre-staging, whatever it is. The smaller applications might be, if we just got a corporate website, we might just stuff that in one subscription and separate it out with resource groups.
Yeah, there's no right answer, but there's also no wrong answer. Other than, and there is actually only the one single wrong answer, and that is everything in one single subscription and one single resource group. with no tags.
Yeah.
And with random names that you don't know what they're supposed to be doing, the resources are supposed to be doing.
Well, we had that and one network as well initially. So
I feel your pain. I feel your
trying
pain.
to break that out.
But no, I hope everybody's enjoyed this. You know, as I say, one of the key things for me as a user group leader is to grow a community in the Leeds area. We were supposed to be having the first physical meetup in April at the I forget the name of the pub now. And it's going to annoy me because I've gone there for many years for the SharePoint user group that used to run there as well. It'll come back to me. But we will, in some point in the future, we will be a physical group, but do a more hybrid approach where we will have a physical in-person event, which may have some people presenting to us remotely or presenting out remotely as well. So it'll be inclusive for the people who want to come to get together locally when it's safe to do so, and also allow people to, you know, decide actually, you know, I want to be in the comfort of my home and lock the door and, you know, stay inside. So there's a good plan for the future for this group. Next month we actually already have the sessions pre-booked. In my rush to try and get things all sorted for this week, after taking a week off last week, I realized, oh, I haven't actually spoken to anybody else about presenting the second slot this week. So I actually decided what we'll do is we'll just have the one session today, because I think it's useful for a newcomer to have some space.
Definitely. I appreciate that.
Oh, you did well, Shabaz. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm open to, you know, you guys telling me what you want me to try and get to the group as, you know, sessions, because I have a wide ranging network when it comes to, you know, the MVP community that I know, whether it's the Microsoft partner community that I can tap into, whether it's even the Microsoft product teams that I can tap into, to try and get them involved and come and present for us. So let me know what you'd like to see more of, and I will do what I can to do it. In the meetup group, there is a form link which for some suggestions, so just throw it in there. I will check them every so often. I've still got a backlog of people who have said that they want to present, so we've got plenty of content to come.
Excellent.
Sounds good.
Okay. And yes, Guy, looking forward to hopefully and getting you to present one day. That'd be good. Because that means it's always good for an organizer like me who can pull together a deck quite quickly if he needs to not have to do that and get somebody like Shabaz here to be able to come in and present, because it helps share the knowledge of all of us, which means we all learn. You're not just hearing the same dreary voice, and I know I can talk for days and days. Okay, I know I'm aware that it is Tuesday evening and everybody is taking their time out. If there's no further questions about the session or the group, I'm happy to let you all go and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Excellent.
Thank you
Thanks for your time. Thanks
Thank you
for
for a good evening. Thank you very much. Well
Cheers,
done,
you.
Shabaz.
Thanks, Maria. Bye. Thanks, everyone. Cheers, Ryan. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
Ryan?
Yeah.
I'd be good maybe in a couple of days or so, or tomorrow, just have a chat with you, just some feedback, really, how you thought it went. Obviously, we had yesterday's session